You know, one of the biggest misconceptions I really had about Jesus when I started walking with Jesus and following Jesus was that I couldn't be honest still with my failures, my hurts, the pain, or kind of the wounds in my life. And so I loved the idea of grace, and I felt like I finally understood it for the first time, but not fully, in the sense of really finding healing that I so desperately needed. And I think that's a cultural lie we all buy too, that you know, we have to hide our wounds, right? And think about wounds, right? They're the places spiritually, just like a physical wound, where they're sensitive. Like when people touch them, you cringe, they hurt, you pull back. They're places we usually hide, right? Like just like a physical wound, you put a bandage on it, you cover it. And then sometimes we think if we just cover it long enough, it'll go away, when usually the exact opposite happens, right? I mean, with a physical wound, if it's, bad enough, if you don't take care of it, if you don't uncover it, let it get healed, take it to the doctor or whatever, then it usually gets infected, and that can get worse and worse and worse and become really unhealthy. And I think a lot of us spiritually, that's us. I think a lot of us, we have places in our hearts that we just pretend aren't there. We don't want to talk about it. We don't want to address it because maybe we're afraid of it, or we're afraid to be honest because of rejection or whatever it is. And it just gets worse. That's why you see certain people who, you go 10, 20, 30 years and they've been hiding it, and it starts to get so bad that it maybe just blows up their life, blows up their marriage, blows up a relationship. And the hard part about that is we don't realize that even though we might have deep wounds, we can actually find deep healing in Jesus. One of my favorite things about looking at Scripture is that when you look at the Old Testament, every time something unclean comes in contact with something clean, that unclean thing wins. And what I mean by that is it defiles the clean thing. It kind of makes the clean thing unclean. But when you get to the New Testament, you see it's actually completely flipped. That the Messiah they were looking for, the one that would take away the curse, bring back that shalom, every time he comes in contact with someone, every time Jesus touches someone, he does not become unclean, they become clean. His resurrection power, his new life, who he is more powerful than their shame, their guilt, their hurt, their pain. And I think, man, we need to hear that. I need to hear that. Whoever's watching this needs to hear that is the power of Jesus, that no matter how deep the wounds are, his grace is deeper, to say it in a certain way, that his healing is deeper. And just like a doctor, right, that's what you need with wounds. A doctor, the first thing they do before they kind of administer healing in the wound is they clean it. It needs to be cleaned, and then you can find healing. And the beautiful part about Jesus is he gives that to us. No matter how dark we feel like something has been done to us or that we've done to other people, we can find that healing. And when he does that, when we reach out and touch him, and instantly we're clean. It's not a progressive thing. It doesn't happen over a long period of time. He looks us right in the eye and says, "You're clean, you're my child, I love you," right in the parts that we've been hiding our whole lives, if we give those to him. And in that instant, if it's a wound and we found healing, then just like a physical wound, when a wound is healed, it becomes a scar. And that's a real interesting way to think about Jesus, that Jesus takes our wounds and he makes them scars. Will we let him? Have we let him? Have we let him take our wounds and make them scars? Think about the difference between those two, right? Like a wound, it's sensitive, it hurts, you cringe, it could get infected, but a scar is totally different. A scar doesn't hurt anymore. A scar isn't sensitive. You don't cover up a scar usually, and a scar tells a story, right? I even say sometimes, maybe that's just a guy thing, right? Tell the story about the scar, but that's usually what we do. Why? Because it does not hurt anymore. We found healing, and that's what it means to tell other people about Jesus, I think, in the most base, fundamental way. It's to find that healing that we so desperately need, and then make that wound into a scar, and then turn around and say, look what Jesus did. Wounds hurt, but scars tell a story. Where would you be in between those two? Have you brought your wounds to Jesus and let him turn them into scars? Do you tell other people about him, or do you tell other people about your story? Because when it's been turned into a scar, you don't hide it anymore. You're not afraid to tell people about the things that maybe you used to be embarrassed of, maybe that were shameful, or maybe that you felt like you had a lot of guilt on that, because that burden's been lifted and you found that healing. And I think that's such a beautiful way to look at Jesus. The good news of the gospel is that he takes our wounds, we can reach out and touch him. And just like a story I read in Luke the other day where the leper says, "If you will, Jesus, make me clean." And he says, "I will be clean." It's as easy as that if you just step and sit at the feet of Jesus, he says, "I will, you're my child, you can be clean." And then that cleanliness becomes a scar, and that's the good news of the gospel. Hey guys, thanks for watching. That actually was coming straight out of chapter 8. I write about the scars and wounds in that chapter, and I share a lot about my own personal story in there, or the wounds that I've had to work through and how I found healing in those places. I hope you pick it up and kind of find an encouragement, not only in chapter 8, but hopefully the whole book. And yeah, the premise of the book is just that it's not what you think. God is doing something, and he's way more scandalous with his grace and his beauty and his joy than we've ever thought. So link down there to check it out, and also make sure to subscribe, and I'll catch you guys later.